Admiral Richard, thank you for being here today. Congratulations again on your nomination. Enjoyed visiting with you the other day. When you and I met in my office, you offered what I thought was a very compelling argument for how to think about the cost of nuclear modernization relative to the size of the defense budget as a whole. And I wondered if you might just share that today for the record for the committee, because I think it's a great perspective.
Senator, thank you. We were discussing the large numbers that are sometimes used to describe the cost of the recapitalization. And for example, there's a recent CBO number. That is a 10-year overall cost, and by itself looks very large. But that's only 3.5% of the defense budget on top of the 3.5% that we spend to maintain the system that we have. That defense budget is itself a fraction of the discretionary budget of this nation, which is also a subset of the overall things that this nation chooses to spend its resources on. So if you do that math, the recapitalization is a fraction of a percent of all the things that this nation chooses to apply its resources to, and that's what buys our deterrence and defense against the only existential threat this nation faces. I think that is a good investment, and in the words of former Secretary of Defense Mattis, this nation can afford survival.
Thank you for that. I think that's very compelling. Let me ask you about the Nuclear Posture Review, which stresses the need to integrate conventional and nuclear forces. Could you define for us conventional nuclear integration and maybe give us a sense of why it's so important and why it actually strengthens conventional deterrence?
Senator, both of those are capabilities that this nation has, and our ability to think through use of both conventional, non-kinetic space cyber in an integrated way, worldwide, in a synchronized and integrated fashion across combatant commands, is the best way to address the threats that we face in the 21st century, which are global in nature.
Let me ask you this. The director of the DIA said earlier this year that, like Russia, China is working to field nuclear theater range precision strike systems. Is it possible, in your judgment, that Beijing would use limited nuclear strikes, or at least threaten them, to compel the United States to surrender if we found ourselves losing a conventional war, or if they found themselves, rather, losing, China did, losing a conventional war with us over a Taiwan fait accompli scenario?
Senator, unlike Russia, China is very opaque in terms of what her doctrine and strategies are, and she does that, I believe, intentionally. I think she believes that she derives benefit from that. They are certainly possess capabilities that would allow them to adopt that type of strategy if they so chose.
Let me ask you this. For some time, the disarmament community has argued that the U.S. could maintain nuclear deterrence while dropping to a nuclear dyad, say, or even just sea-based nuclear platforms. In your view, can you tell us, how do the different legs of the nuclear triad reinforce one another, and why are they each so important?
Senator, the Nuclear Posture Review, I think, wisely has us on a strategy that tailors our deterrent response to each individual adversary. This is not the Cold War. We face multiple threats from multiple actors, and the complementary nature of the attributes of the triad enable us to be able to tailor our deterrent strategies. We could go into a lot of detail, but the ballistic missile leg, the submarine leg, is the survivable leg. The intercontinental ballistic missile has a promptness that is not achieved by any other system. The bombers provide a signaling and man-in-the-loop opportunity that the other systems don't have. That's just a very high-level wave at the tremendous wisdom of the initial designers of the triad.
Let me ask you about the ICBM leg, since you mentioned it. How would you respond to the argument that we could cut the ICBM leg of the triad and offset that capacity by uploading additional weapons to our SSBN force, for instance?
The ICBMs provide unique attributes that cannot be provided by the other legs of the triad.
Thank you very much, Admiral. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.